Anybody like puzzles? Anybody puzzlers here? Wow, there's a lot of puzzle lovers here. A lot of puzzle lovers. My wife, Cassidy, she loves puzzles. She loves puzzles, and she's kind of scary good at puzzles too. Like, if I do a puzzle with Cassidy, I might get one or two pieces in 20 minutes, and she's done like half the puzzle. So I'm just kind of like, where does this go? And she's like, it goes there. Hurry up, catch up with me. She is super good at puzzles. She comes from a whole family of puzzlers. Like, her whole family loves puzzles. In fact, one of her grandparents, they like slacker every one of their puzzles and hang it in their garage. So like they have a deep love of the puzzle world. Now, one of the essential pieces, if you are a puzzler, you know this, of building a puzzle is that you actually have what the puzzle looks like, okay? Like that's really helpful, whether it's like on the front of the box, the back of the box, or sometimes they'll have like those paper posters that like come with the puzzles to help you know exactly what the puzzle is going to look like. But what if you had a puzzle, okay, and it was a puzzle that you just found maybe at a garage sale, and you're not even sure all the pieces are there, or maybe you found it in grandma's attic, you don't have a box, you don't have a poster, but you've just got this puzzle in this Ziploc bag. Oh, here's an extra piece. And you're looking to build this puzzle. Now, even as like a small 100-piece puzzle, I, at least, in my lack of puzzling prowess, would find this puzzle difficult to build with no picture, because you have no idea what it's going to be. Like, you've seen the picture, you know it's the United States of America, but if you just found this at a yard sale or grandma's attic, like, you have no idea what this puzzle is. It could be a puzzle of the White House, it could be a puzzle of a nature preserve, it could be a puzzle of the Flintstones, for all we know. Like, we have no idea what this puzzle would look like. And if you're a puzzler, you could probably do some things like hunt for edge pieces. Like, I hear that's a thing in the puzzle world. You're supposed to hunt for edge pieces. I think this is one. This is an edge piece. But you still, even if you got all the edge pieces together, you wouldn't really know what you're trying to build. Like, yeah, it's a puzzle, but what is the picture? How do I know what pieces connect with what pieces? And in many ways, a puzzle without a guide, without a picture, without a rubric, so to speak, you're kind of missing the why of why you're building the puzzle. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Where are we trying to go? You might end up sticking pieces that you thought go together, like, well, actually, none of these go together. Let's see here. Let's find. You might stick pieces together that you think go together, but at the end of the puzzle, you find out that they definitely don't go together. And at the end, your puzzle just kind of looks askew and kind of looks weird. And maybe Homer Simpson's head is under the donut instead of eating the donut in the puzzle. Like, who knows what your puzzle may look like? See, sometimes in life can feel like building a puzzle with no picture. It can feel like building a puzzle that you found in a random Ziploc bag at a yard sale, and you're not even sure all of the pieces of your life are there. It can be hard to build the puzzle in a way that it makes sense, in a way that actually looks like a legit puzzle that you might want to hang on the wall or something. Building a puzzle is kind of like that. I understand in the puzzle world that you're supposed to basically start with the edges and then you're supposed to work your way in. But without a picture, you might end up grabbing a random inner piece and trying to put it somewhere that it doesn't go at all. And this is understandable in life, because in life there are so many things, so many people that are fighting for our attention. Any of you ever felt that? Any of you ever felt like there's just like so many people or so many businesses or ads or activities that are fighting for your attention in your life? I mean, we've got things like work. We've got things like running errands or kids' sports games or kids' school events or meals or this thing called sleep we're supposed to participate in or house projects or maybe it's trips or activities or paying the bills or holiday activities or events or your faith or maybe it's meals, making meals for home. All of these things in the puzzle of our life kind of build this collage. And sometimes it can be hard to know where all of the pieces go. And on top of all of the things that we have going on in our lives, we're supposed to somehow make time and even prioritize being a part of a community of faith, being a part of a local church. That can be really difficult sometimes as individuals, as people who are just running rampant with everything that is going on in our life. Even as Christians, it can sometimes be dangerously easy to allow our engagement in a community of faith to slip further and further down on our priority scale. I mean, our world pressures us with all kinds of things that we're supposed to be a part of. Like, if you want to be a good parent, your kids have to be in X, Y, and Z. Or if you want to be a good employee, you have to make sure you do X, Y, and Z beyond what you actually are paid to do. Now, trust me, there is no sort of expectation I have, and please don't hear this, that I expect you to be at church every single week. Like, I'm not even at church every single week. I'm the pastor and I skip 3 Sundays a year. But as followers of Jesus Christ, we need to be intentional with our prioritization of being engaged with a community of faith. Because if we truly are serious about growing in our faith, growing in our relationship with Jesus, we cannot do that in a vacuum. You can't grow in your faith in Jesus in a vacuum. Yes, you can read the scriptures and you can learn from that, but growth happens in community. And the scriptures talk about how iron sharpens iron. But in Hebrews, I love what it says, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 through 25. I think I read this last week in our little prequel to this teaching. It says this: let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. If we want to grow in our faith, if we want to be actively participating in a relationship with Jesus, then we have to be participating in the body of Christ, the local church. We have to be engaged in that. And that's more than just Sundays. Like, please hear me. This is not, there may be some of you here that are like, oh, this is a very nicely veiled thing for the pastor to tell us that we're supposed to be at church on Sundays. That's not the goal with this. This is not some like weird passive-aggressive Sunday attendance booster message. Like, that's not what this is. There's lots of ways to be engaged with the life of a local church. There are Sundays, yes, but there's things like pods or our small groups, which we actually have a brand new one of starting later this week. Or maybe it's teams, or maybe it's special events like the community festival, or maybe it's not even something that's like church sanctioned. It's just getting together with other families that you've connected with and building authentic relationships with. Or maybe it is Sundays, like being engaged on Sundays or being engaged in some other way with our teachings online. Whatever it is, we as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, we are not intended to consume church as consumers, which is what our culture teaches us to be, but rather we are challenged and we are called to be participants in God's church, to be participating in the work that God is doing through a local church. I love what it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 27. It says, now you are the body of Christ. Each of you is a part of it. To be a part of it, by definition, you're not just like an onlooker. You're not just like a consumer, like, oh, hey, I love what they're doing over there. If you are a part of the body of Christ, it says that each of you is a part of it. If we want to grow in our faith, if we want to be active participants in the work that Jesus is doing in our lives, we actually have to be a part of the body of Christ, engaged in the body of Christ. Now, this is just the first side of the coin. There's two sides to every coin, unless you have a weird coin. There's two sides to every coin, and this is just the important and also struggle for Christians to prioritize attending church or being a part of a local community on a regular basis. Did you actually know, this is free, I didn't put this in my notes, that currently, according to national standards, to be a regular attender at a church, you only have to show up once every 3 weeks? That's all you have to do to be considered into the regular attender category. I don't know about you, but if I only read my Bible or if I only talk to my wife once every 3 weeks, our relationship does not go very well. Like, I'll check back with you in 3 weeks, wife. Like, I hope you're doing okay then. like that doesn't go very well. And so we have to learn and we have to work through the struggle of prioritizing what it means for us to be engaged in the life of a church. But the other side of that coin that I was talking about is what it means for people who do not yet know Jesus to engage with a local community or with a local church. If us as followers of Jesus, people who are dedicated to the life, mission, and teachings of Jesus, if we in modern America struggle to prioritize engagement in the local church, then what role does the church even have in the lives of those who do not yet know him? Let me say that again. If we as followers of Jesus struggle to prioritize church, or struggle to prioritize our participation in church, not even on Sundays, just in general, then what role does the church have in the lives of those who do not yet know Jesus? You see, in our world today, the cultural participation in church is gone. I don't know if you're aware of that, but it is. Cultural participation in church is a thing of the past. If you're lucky, you might get people at Easter or Christmas, and most of the time there are people that are going because that's where the rest of the family was going, and if they didn't go, they wouldn't be there. But cultural participation in the church is gone. And to be completely blunt, a lot of people who don't know Jesus, church is not even on their radar. Like when they think of Sunday morning or when they think of like engaging with things throughout their week on a weeknight or whatever, participating in a local church, not on their radar. This is something I have to remind myself of on a regular basis because as a pastor, I think about church 24/7. But the person I just checked out next to in Target, she probably doesn't care. She probably has no idea what it means to be a part of a church and why that could be beneficial and important in her life. A lot of people who are far from Jesus, they have no idea why church should even be relevant to their life. And they say things, which is what our series is based off of. When someone talks about church, they say, "Ugh, church, why would I go there? Like, what is the purpose of that? Why would I show up at a place that I don't know and the people I don't know and they're probably just going to judge me? They probably think that my life is screwed up. Like, why would I show up there?" You see, this is a sad but true reality of what our current culture feels about church. Yes, like our guest speaker last week talked about, there are revivals happening throughout the nation, throughout the world, and we should be praying and participating for those. And I am believing that God is bringing a season of revival in the lives and hearts of young people in our culture and in our community. But as a general standard, our culture, church is antiquated. They're like, why is this relevant for me? because they have so many things going on, just like you do. And if we struggle to prioritize church, what's that going to be like for them? So what does that mean? What it means is that we as Christians, we as people who are dedicated followers of Jesus, we need to set the example by proactively living in opposition to the question, ugh, church, why would I go there? We need to be prepared to share with people and show people why being active and participating in the life of a local church is so meaningful and so valuable and so important because of how it is meaningful and impactful and relevant to our own lives. People don't care what you have to say if you don't practice what you preach. And so when we make church important in our lives, when we make being engaged in small groups and teams and Sundays, in whatever aspect of the life of a local church is, when we make that important, then when people that are far from Jesus come to us and we're in relationship with them, we're able to absolve their fears about church. Did you know a lot of most non-Christians or most people who do not yet know Jesus, they're actually just afraid to go to church? Because they think that they're not wanted, which is the complete opposite of the truth, but they just think they're not wanted. Or they just, like I was saying a minute ago, they don't understand the relevance that it holds in their life. Like, I've got a billion things. I got 12 soccer games next week, and I got to work, and the boss wants me to do this, and then I just found that Aunt Susie just broke her hip. Like, there's all these things going on in people's life. And where does church even fit in that for them? So we as Christians, we have to set the example by proactively living in opposition to the why does church matter question. Because alongside their fears and alongside the lack of relevance they feel for church, people also who are far from Jesus, they have a predisposed or a pre-developed opinion about church. They do, whether it's right or wrong. You probably have that about other churches that you've not even been to. Like, oh, I would never go to that church. They're X, Y, or Z. We don't know that. They could be the best church on the block. And if we do that as Christians, then what can we expect from people who do not yet know Jesus to think about churches in general? And these assumptions, these opinions, they could be from a whole host of things. They could be from a painful experience they had in a church. A lot of people have been burned by churches. It could be from a predisposition of just how they were taught. Maybe one of their parents had a bad experience with the church and so taught them that Christians are just a bunch of hate mongers or something wackadoodle like that. Or maybe it's from just a lack of personal experience or a lack of knowledge in their life. Maybe they just simply don't know. They've never been truly engaged. But the reality is that our culture is in a moment of crisis. And part of the reason that is because there is this concept that has rooted itself into American culture that says, ugh, church, why would I go there? And so over the next 2 weeks in this series, ugh, church, why would I go there? We're going to be diving into just a few of the important and crucial reasons that it matters for us as people, as followers of Jesus, to be engaged in the life of a local church. Maybe it's here at 317 Church. I hope it is, but maybe you find somewhere else. I'm not trying to send you away. I'm just saying I want you somehow, somewhere, to be engaged in the life of a local church. Not just so that our numbers are great or whatever, but it matters for your relationship with Jesus. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at two factors. One, the importance of a local church in our lives based on our own spiritual growth, how it affects us, how it helps us grow. I mean, just read the book of Acts in the New Testament, and you will see the relevance and the importance of being engaged in a Christian community has in the life of believers. It's not a guilt trip, it's just a reality. And then the second piece is that so that we can be better equipped as followers of Jesus to help those who do not yet know Jesus understand the impact and the relevance that church has in our lives and in the lives of anyone ever, because they need Jesus. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be diving in to just a few of the key factors that are involved in this conversation. But today, we're going to be discussing just the first. I'm trying to dial my teachings back. I was originally going to do like 3 today, and then I was like, let's do 1 today. We're going to dive into the first and the most important reason that it is essential for us as individuals to be engaged in the life of a local church. And it's this. This is the first reason. Church is important because it regularly focuses us on Jesus. Let me say that again. Church is important because it regularly focuses us on Jesus. Now, some of you might be like, wow, what a great novel idea you've just shared with us there, Seth. We come to church to focus on Jesus. Man, I'm really learning today. What a novel concept. Yes, it seems elementary if you've been in church most of your life, but let me tell you, I've been around the church for a long, long time, and the number of churches that I know that have lost making Jesus the focus of their gatherings and having their gatherings become more focused on what is comfortable for them is staggering and frankly kind of sad. And it is also why the church has become irrelevant. Because when we do not focus on Jesus every single week like clockwork, when we do not focus on Jesus relentlessly in a way that's like, would he talk about something else? Could we talk about something else? If we do not focus on Jesus and lift Jesus up in that manner, we are the ones who are making ourselves irrelevant in people's lives. Because Jesus, in the fullness of who he is, encompassing his love, his grace, his truth, he stands as the most relevant, impactful, transformative person, topic, and relationship that has ever existed, period. The most relevant ever. And if we as a church become more self-focused, more comfort-driven, and we do not relentlessly pursue Jesus, then the irrelevance of us to people who do not yet know Jesus has nothing to do with the depravity of our world, but everything to do with our own self-centeredness. Because Jesus matters. He does. At the end of the day, that's the hill I will die on. Is that Jesus matters. And when we focus on Jesus, things change. People's lives are impacted. Relevance is found. Communities are transformed when people come to Jesus. They don't come to me like I'm not that cool. But when people come to Jesus, that's what counts. I love what John chapter 12, verse 32 says. It says, and Jesus is telling this to his disciples. He says, and when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw everyone to myself. There's a lot of things actually that Jesus, as he's going to ascend and go into heaven, he starts commissioning in his disciples. He doesn't do it with this one. He says, I will draw people to myself. Jesus does the drawing of those who do not yet know him to himself. Yes, that doesn't mean we're not called to be ambassadors. We are. We're called to be Christ's representatives, helping guide people and say, hey, please come back to God, as Paul says. And we talk about that a lot here. It's not that we're not meant to be ambassadors, but we are also meant to rely on Jesus and the fact that he is the one that draws people to himself, and he draws people to salvation in him. I mean, look at it this way. Has inviting someone to church or even helping someone accept Christ, has that ever seemed daunting to you? Has that ever seemed daunting to you? Has it ever seemed like you have to flip into this used car salesman mode? Like, hey, accept Jesus today and I'll give you a free spa weekend getaway. Like right now, it's $19.99. Sometimes when we help people experience Jesus, when we help people find the relevance of church or engage them with the gospel, it can feel really bizarre. It can feel like we're just trying to sell them the next fad. But it doesn't have to be this way. And to be honest, what I have come to realize is that when I find aspects of my faith, my personal faith, when I find them challenging, or when I find God calling me to do things that I don't feel like I can do, often that is because my focus has shifted to me and off of Jesus. And to be completely honest with you, it's so easy to do that. Situations all the time where I look at them and I'm like, God, I really don't want to do that. Please don't make me do that. And he's like, who are you looking at, me or yourself? Even as dedicated followers of Jesus, it can be so easy to get our focus off of Jesus. But when we look at Jesus, all things are possible. I love the story of Peter. I tell stories about the disciple Peter often. But in Matthew chapter 14, we have this story of Peter, and this is the story where Jesus has been teaching the crowds, and he sends his disciples out on a boat into the Sea of Galilee. And he doesn't go with them at first, but then later, he comes walking out on the water to meet them, because that's what Jesus does, and he likes to do things like that. He's just like, hey, let me show you what I can do. So he comes walking out onto the water, and all of his disciples, except for Peter, are like, oh, it's a ghost. Like, Casper's here. Like, help us. And they're freaking out. But Peter is like, oh, Jesus, I want to walk to you. And so Peter, who probably all the other disciples are like, this moron is going to drown. He jumps out of the boat and he starts walking to Jesus. Don't miss this. And while Peter watches Jesus, he too walks on water. He too walks on water when he looks into the eyes of Jesus. But then when Peter sees the waves and he starts focusing on his own feet, what happens? He sinks. He starts to drown and he says, Lord, save me. So often, our lives are like this, where we take our eyes off of Jesus and we look at the waves of our life and we go, I'm screwed. But Jesus calls us to be focused on him. And that is part of the importance of being engaged in the life of a local church, that we as a community, every week, we personally and purposefully dedicate and devote time to set aside the waves of our lives and realign our lives to be focused on Jesus. That is why it is so crucial for us to be engaged in the life of a church, because Jesus, he is the author, he is the perfecter, he is the sustainer of our faith. And when we do not focus on him, to be completely blunt, all hell breaks loose. We have to be focused on Jesus. And the reality is, the beautiful reality is that when we do that, when we as a church, when we as individuals focus on Jesus, things start to change. Relationships are healed. You've probably got a relationship in your life that just feels completely in shambles. Relationships are healed. Fears are stilled. Differences that our world tries to use to separate us are celebrated rather than used as barriers. Mission and personal growth are prioritized over preference. Authenticity in relationships is fostered. Burdens are shared. People who do not yet know Jesus are drawn to him because they see us being ambassadors and they see us focusing on the King of Heaven, and they say, there's something different happening there. When we focus on Jesus, lives are transformed. The hope and the holiness of God is made real in the hearts of people and communities, whole communities. There's amazing stories about this that I'll have to share sometime. Entire communities are healed from brokenness, from addiction. But what does this mean for you today? How does this relate to you today? Yes, as a church, we strategically do things to keep the focus on Jesus, to keep us focusing and talking about Jesus, but what does it mean for you on a weekly basis to keep your focus on Jesus? To keep your life centered on the King of Kings? Where does church and your focus on Jesus, where does that puzzle piece of your life rank? Is it an edge piece? Is it a corner piece? The Bible actually talks about this. Is it a corner piece of your life? Or is it like a middle piece that you're like, oh, it fell on the floor. There's a hole in my puzzle. Oh, here it is. Let's put that in there. I'm supposed to have that in there for the puzzle to be complete. Where does your puzzle piece of faith and being engaged in a local church, where does it rank? Is it at the top? Is it at the bottom? Is it somewhere in the middle? Are you not sure where it is? If we want to be people who grow in our relationship with God, who help others find hope and freedom in Jesus, then we have to be people that prioritize our own personal engagement in the life of the local church. This is not an elongated come on Sundays pitch. This is if we want to be people of Jesus, we have to engage with the body of Christ. And so today, as you leave, the host team is going to have a puzzle piece for everyone. I just want you to take that puzzle piece home and just pray about it. Just pray and ask God, where have I put engagement with your body? Where have I put that in my priority list? Where have I put it? And where do you want me to put it? Because God has something for all of us. But we have to be willing to engage. We have to be willing to step out on the water and look at Him, not the waves. Let's stand and sing.